India and China are jointly producing, some historians have estimated, close to 50% of global GDP in the late 18th century, as late as the late 18th century. They are gigantic centers of economic activity. The Europeans have built up their economies in a way that's essentially parasitic on Asia, not just on India and China, but on the Middle East as well. Going back to the sort of rise of Venice, the Venetian Empire was through the Crusades built trade routes into the Middle East and started to buy up all kinds of goods, from porcelain to silk to spices to textiles from Asia that they then traded in Europe. So Europe grows up; it's sort of financial centers grow up according to whoever is able to control those trade routes into the Middle East and Asia. And that changes various times over the centuries. So Europe is constantly spending money in Asia in return for goods that can be sold and traded. That money takes the form of gold and silver. And in order for any economy to grow and become dominant in Europe, it has to have vast quantities of gold and silver that it can spend in the Middle East, India, and China in order to buy these goods to sell them. And as European history goes on and the scale of this trade gets larger and larger, the search for gold and silver becomes dominant in the European project. As we know, Spain is the country that really opens up a new supply of silver in Peru and Bolivia. And that silver enters Europe and then goes straight over to China. Most of that silver is spent acquiring goods from China that can be sold in Europe. So you have an accumulating sort of desperation in Europe for more and more silver and gold to pay Asia. And this, I argue in the book, is one of the things driving the East India Company. The East India Company wishes to access the Bengali textile industry and Bengali taxation because this is one of the largest stores of silver in the world. And that silver has become necessary for the East India Company to keep buying tea from China and things like this. So you know the history. I mean, the history of laying claim to Bengali taxation and taking that silver out, creating total havoc, mass famine, all that sort of thing. And you also know the consequences thereof, that if essentially Britain lost America as a result of this, because it tried to get America to pay for the collapse of the Bengali economy. What I'm getting to is that this whole desperation of Europe to try and keep pace with Asia led to transformed Europe in two very important ways. One is it was slavery and the Industrial Revolution that became the main systems by which Europe tried to generate some capital for competing face to face with the much, much larger Asian economies. So slavery and the Industrial Revolution, of course, are absolutely catalytic for European modernity. And the other thing is that Europe, for Britain, it becomes a global capitalist superpower, not when it defeats France in the Napoleonic Wars, though that does make it the leading power in Europe. It becomes a global superpower when it destroys India and China, which it does increasingly, which essentially is accomplished pretty much by the 1840s. The Mughal Empire is in sort of terminal decline by that point, and more importantly, I think, Britain has destroyed China in the two Opium Wars, which means that by that point, Europe is able to emerge as the sort of manager of a global capitalist system. And at that point, all the things you talk about, spreading a net of European law and especially property rights over the entire planetary surface through conquest and through deals with local rulers, that becomes possible it becomes possible for European capital to travel all over the world and to invest in different kinds of resources and mines and forests and farms and things like that, in such a way that Europe can essentially own the resources of the planet.